There are sad K-drama deaths, and then there are the ones that completely rearranged us, the ones we still think about at random moments years later for no reason at all, the ones that made us pause the episode, sit in silence, and ask the screen, why? Today we're counting down the saddest deaths in K-drama history. Some of these are famous. Everyone saw them coming, and it still didn't help. Others are quieter, buried in dramas a lot of you may have skipped, and they hit just as hard, maybe harder, because nobody warned you. A few of your favorites might show up much later than you expect, and at least one death near the very top isn't from a hit drama at all. It's a true story, which somehow makes it worse. Let's get into it. We're starting with a drama that gets remembered for its twists more than its tears. But Big Mouth earns its place here through the person caught in the middle of all that scheming. Go Miho spends the entire show fighting for her husband, a small-time lawyer suddenly framed as a criminal mastermind, refusing to back down even as the people around him keep getting hurt. She's steady where he isn't, the one holding things together while his world falls apart. Late in the series, she's exposed to contaminated water at the center of the show's conspiracy, and what looks like a minor injury turns into a stage 4 cancer diagnosis almost overnight. There's no long battle, no dramatic recovery arc. She passes away in her husband's arms not long after, and it's staged with a quiet, peaceful tenderness that makes it hurt more, not less. It's the moment that finally pushes him to stop just surviving the conspiracy around him and start actually taking it down. Her death isn't a twist. It's just cruelty, plain and simple, aimed at someone who did nothing wrong except try to protect the person she loved. If a death this quiet can still sting this much, imagine what's waiting for you at the other dramas on this list. Once he's gone, Mouse makes it clear that nobody is protected. Not the good guys, not the innocent, nobody. I remember watching this play out and thinking, okay, this show means it. It's not going to hold anything back. And it didn't. We're only getting started, and already the show is telling you the rules don't apply the way you think they do. Here's one a lot of casual fans forget because he spends most of the show being the quiet, dependable one in the background. Go Chung-myung was a royal guard captain in ancient Silla, in love with a bandit leader named Jang Man-wol back when she was still human. Circumstances tore them apart. He was forced into marrying someone else and pressured into betraying the people close to her. By the time everything finally comes to a head between them, it's too late to undo what's already been done. In their last confrontation, he chooses to throw himself onto her blade rather than let her carry the weight of what happens next alone. His soul stays bound to her after that. He lingers near Man-wol for 1,300 years, the same span she carries her own curse, appearing as a small, glowing firefly that never quite leaves her side. It isn't until the very end, when she finally speaks his name again for the first time in all that time, that he's able to let go. It's just a soldier finally allowed to rest after 13 centuries of loving someone he could never fully make it right with. That's what makes it sad in a different way than most of this list. It's not about losing someone suddenly. It's about someone who never let himself live in the first place and only finds peace the moment he's gone. We're barely into the 20s and the show hasn't even brought out its main heartbreak yet. Signal isn't really a show about death. It's a show about time and about detectives separated by decades, solving cold cases through a walkie-talkie that shouldn't work, but somehow does. Lee Jae-han is the detective on the other end of that radio, working a case in 1989 while his present-day counterpart, decades later, tries to help him from a future he can't see. He's stubborn, principled, and willing to chase the truth, even when it puts him directly in the path of people who'd rather it stay buried. Partway through the series, that persistence gets him shot by a corrupt superior, cut off mid-transmission, And for a long, gutting stretch of episodes, the show lets everyone, present-day partner included, believe he's simply gone. It's one of the most devastating stretches in the entire series, built on the guilt of a man who couldn't save someone he'd never even met in person. Signal being what it is, though, the finale complicates even that. The show leaves real room to believe the timeline the present-day team fought so hard to change might have spared him after all. It's an ending fans still debate, and honestly, that uncertainty is very on brand for a show built entirely around the question of what can and can't be undone. Up next is a death that doesn't leave any room for debate at all. There are still several heartbreaking deaths ahead of us. This is just where the list starts finding its footing. Flower of Evil spends its entire runtime asking whether a person can truly change, whether love can survive, discovering your husband isn't who you thought he was. Do Minseok is the answer to a darker question. What happens to the people who create monsters instead of raising them? He's the biological father, the real architect behind the serial murders that have haunted this story from episode 1, and the reason his son grew up as someone else entirely, hiding a stolen identity just to survive. His death, when it finally comes, doesn't ask for your sympathy, and the show doesn't give it much either. It's not built to make you grieve him. It's built to let you exhale. Years of trauma, secrets, and stolen identity finally have somewhere to end, and everyone left standing, Hyun-soo, Ji-won, Moo-jin, gets to start building something that isn't shadowed by him anymore. Not every heartbreaking death is heartbreaking because we mourn the person who died. Sometimes it's heartbreaking because of the years of pain they left behind, and because their death is the first moment the people they hurt finally have a chance to heal. Now, young king, arrogant, insecure, and desperate to be loved by a nation that trusted his brother-in-law instead of him. That king's death, poisoned in his own palace after a lifetime of paranoia and bad decisions, sets literally everything in this show into motion. What makes it sad isn't that we like him. We don't, not at first. It's what he becomes afterward. Centuries later, stripped of any memory of who he used to be, he's revealed to be Gwangju, the Grim Reaper, carrying the weight of that lifetime's sins with him, even though he doesn't know why, quietly serving beside the very people his past self destroyed. It's a death that isn't really an ending at all. It's a curse dressed up as one, and Goblin spends its entire runtime slowly making you feel sorry for the man who caused all of it. If you think that's heavy, wait until we get to what that same betrayal did to Kim Shin. Alchemy of Souls throws a lot at you. Soul-shifting, forbidden magic, a heroine who spends half the story living inside someone else's body. It's easy to get lost in the mechanics of it all and forget how much this show makes you care about the person underneath. Naksu is a feared assassin whose soul ends up trapped inside the body of Mudeok, a servant girl who slowly becomes Jang-uk's closest ally, his teacher, and eventually the person he falls for, all without either of them fully understanding what she really is underneath. She spends most of the story trying to become someone gentler than the person she used to be. That progress gets ripped away when the villain, Jin Moo, reactivates the control he once held over her, turning her back into a weapon against her will and setting her on a collision course with the very people she's grown to love. Jang-uk, faced with someone he can no longer reach and no longer recognize, is forced to strike her down himself. She falls into the lake afterward, and her body isn't found again for a long time. It's a death caused by someone else's cruelty, delivered by someone else's hand, and it doesn't leave Jang-uk with anything close to closure. Sometimes the saddest deaths aren't the ones with a villain standing over the body. They're the ones where the person who loved them most had no choice at all. We're not even at the halfway point yet, and some of the heaviest names on this list haven't even shown up. Didn't think twice. And now he spends the show trying to give other people the second chance. Favorite hasn't shown up yet. Don't worry, there's a very good chance it's still ahead. Bulgasal is one of those dramas that rewards patience, weaving centuries-old curses and reincarnated souls into a modern-day mystery that takes a while to fully click. Dan Sol is introduced as someone tied to the show's central curse, long before the audience fully understands what that curse even is, and long before we understand just how little say she's had over her own fate. She spent lifetimes bound to a tragedy that was never hers to begin with, carrying pain that started with people who came long before her. What makes her storyland isn't a twist, it's the exhaustion of it. Dan Sol doesn't get a clean ending or a moment of rest. She's a woman caught in a cycle she never chose, paying for a curse she didn't create, and the show never pretends that's fair. It's a death that refuses to let you grieve properly, because grieving would mean it's over, and for Dan Sol, it never really is. That's what makes Bulgasal so unsettling to sit with. We're now solidly into the deaths that changed how their entire shows were remembered. We're back at the hotel, and this time it's the ending itself. Koo Chan-sung spends the entire series as the very human, very mortal manager working alongside Jang Man-wol, slowly falling for a woman who's been dead for well over 1,000 years and can't remember why. When the show reveals that he's tied to someone from her past, someone she loved and lost long before the hotel ever existed, it recontextualizes everything. The show never spells out exactly what happens to him after the story ends. It leaves him as a mortal man living out an ordinary human lifespan alongside a woman who, by definition, can't stay mortal with him. It doesn't show you the ending directly. It just makes sure you understand what an ending like that has to eventually mean, and lets you sit with everything that implies. It's sad, but it's the gentlest kind of sad on this list. The kind that comes from watching two people finally get something close to the ending centuries of bad timing kept stealing from them. If that one got you, brace yourself. The version of this heartbreak still waiting on this list is a lot less gentle. If you've seen The Penthouse, you already know exactly why this one is here, because this is the death the entire series is built on top of. Min Seol-ah is a talented young singer, the daughter of a housekeeper working in one of the wealthiest, most toxic buildings in the country. She's kind, hopeful, and completely unprepared for just how far the people around her are willing to go to protect their status. Her fall from the rooftop of Hera Palace in the very first episode isn't just shocking. It's the engine that drives all 3 seasons of chaos, betrayal, and revenge that follow. What makes her death so effective isn't complexity. It's how unfair it is. She's one of the only genuinely innocent people in a show absolutely stacked with liars, schemers, and morally bankrupt elites, and she's the one who pays the ultimate price for their ambition. Every twist, every reveal, every unhinged moment. The Penthouse is famous for traces back to this one girl on a rooftop. It's the rare death that isn't just sad. It's the reason the entire show exists. We haven't even reached the deaths that changed K-drama history forever. Those are still ahead. Hi Bye Mama spends its entire runtime building toward a goodbye we all know is coming, and somehow that doesn't make it hurt any less when it finally arrives. Cha Yuri has already been dead for years by the time the show starts, granted a rare, temporary chance to return to life and reconnect with the daughter who barely remembers her, and the husband who's slowly started to move on. Every episode is borrowed time, and the show never lets you forget it. When her limited days finally run out, and she has to return to the afterlife for good, it's not framed as tragic in a shocking way. It's framed as something she always knew was coming, which somehow makes it worse. She gets to say goodbye properly this time. That's the mercy the show gives her. It's also exactly what makes it so hard to watch. Few dramas make you grieve someone twice. This one does, and it earns every second of it. If you're enjoying this countdown and you love K-dramas as much as I do, go ahead and hit subscribe. We've got plenty more of these rankings and deep dives coming. Now, back to the heartbreak. This next one is different from everything else on this list because it isn't fiction. The Hymn of Death is based on the real lives of Yoon Sim-deok, Korea's first professional soprano, and Kim Woo-jin, a married playwright she fell in love with during a period when that kind of relationship had no place to exist safely. Their story played out publicly, painfully, under the weight of family expectations, financial ruin, and a society with no room for the life they wanted together. In 1926, the two of them died together at sea while traveling home from Japan, a tragedy that shocked the country and turned them into legend almost overnight. The drama doesn't invent this ending. It's simply telling you what actually happened to two real people who ran out of options in a world that refused to make room for them. It's a heavier kind of sad than anything else on this list because there's no writer to blame, no twist to dissect. Just two real lives that ended far too soon. If you or someone you know is struggling, please know that support is out there, and reaching out for it is never a weak thing to do. We're closing in on the deaths that genuinely changed how people talk about this entire genre. We told you Goblin would be back, and this is the one everyone's been waiting for. After centuries of loneliness, after finally finding Ji Eun-tak, the one woman capable of removing the sword, cursing him, and setting him free, Kim Shin faces an impossible choice. Stay immortal and alone forever, or finally let the sword be pulled and accept the death he's been running from for nearly 1,000 years. He chooses to let go. What makes this death so unforgettable isn't shock. It's peace. After everything this man has survived, every betrayal, every century of watching people he loved grow old and disappear, he finally gets an ending on his own terms, surrounded by someone who genuinely loves him instead of alone. The show doesn't leave it there completely, softening the blow with reincarnation. Some endings you see coming from the very first episode, and it doesn't make a single bit of difference. Eugene Choi spends the entire series as a man caught between two identities: the Korean boy who fled poverty and slavery to become an American Marine, and the man who returns to the country that abandoned him, only to fall completely, hopelessly in love with Go-ae-sun, a noble woman turned independence fighter, risking everything for a cause bigger than either of them. From the very beginning, Mr. Sunshine tells you this isn't going to end well. It's set during one of the most tragic periods in Korean history, and it never once pretends the two of them get to escape that history untouched. Every stolen moment between them feels like it's on loan from a story that has no intention of giving it back. When Eugene finally dies in the show's final stretch, protecting the cause and the country he spent his whole life being rejected by, it isn't a twist, it's the ending the entire series has been quietly building toward from the very first scene. And somehow, knowing it was coming makes it hurt even more, not less. It's the kind of death that doesn't just close out a character's story, it closes out an entire era, an entire generation of people who gave everything for a country that couldn't give them the ending they deserved. A-sun goes on without him, and so do we, and neither of us is ever quite the same afterward. Maybe that's why these stories stay with us long after the credits roll. They remind us how deeply fictional people in fictional wars can make us feel something painfully real. I'm genuinely curious which one of these still gets you the most, or which death you think I left off this list completely. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for spending this one with me. I'll see you in the next one.